I now invite Mr. Sunil Kant
of the dais. The reason for inviting these three gentlemen, because each of them is actually a part of this story. The idea for writing this book is not new. In effect, this book has actually been in the making for many decades. Right since the 1980s, we started getting requests from a variety of people to write a book either about my father or about the family, the company, the businesses, or a combination of these. And his response was always the same, that you're not supposed to talk about yourself. It's not okay. This is not the done thing. This is not the Indian thing to do. And these requests would pour in from economists, from business specialists, from writers and authors of all kinds. Many of our friends said this is a story which needs to be told. He finally agreed when he was 90, or he was over 90. And I suspect he may partially have agreed because when he turned 90, for his birthday, I called many of his friends and colleagues and asked them to write a letter because we were thinking about what can you give someone like him. He was not a person given too much for material goods. So we asked all his friends to write a letter to him and say whatever they would like about him in that letter. But I said, please send it to me, don't send it to him. And we will publish this in a book and circulate that book to family, friends, and all those who write the letters. But once the letters came in, it was actually both emotional and quite surprising that many of the letters were very, very personal. He had done favors for many people that we knew nothing about. And the majority of the people who had written, by the way, there were hundreds and hundreds of letters. Majority of the people who had written the letters said, he's my special friend. So many people had built this connection with him. And I think when he saw that, and by the way, we published only one copy of the book because the letters were so personal. We decided not to circulate it widely. We just published one copy and gave it to him as a gift. For him to realize, because he would always say, my wealth lies in my relationships, in the family, in the people that I know, the people that I've grown up with. Because one of the things that had got built almost as a rigor into the organization was that other things being equal, somebody who's been working with you will always get more business. And the other thing he had done was to build friendships across the board. Many of our competitors in different businesses, some of them sitting here, are actually family friends. While we were competing in business, but at the same time, these relationships that got built, which are both endearing and enduring through generations. So, just going back a few years, he finally agreed that it's okay to write a book. We picked a team who we thought would be most suited to do this. Unfortunately, they were busy doing another project, and they asked for a bit of time to come back and write this book. By the time they came back, unfortunately, it was late and we lost him. But the requests to write the book continued to come even after that. I thought a little bit about it and I said, since he had agreed, the book should get written. But the reality is, who would know the story more than somebody from the inside? And I thought I would take on this exercise myself. But it was an interesting and an unusual challenge because the story starts in the 1930s, before India's independence and before the partition with what turned into Pakistan. It was hard to get real data. Of course, I knew the stories that I heard many, many times at home, in the family, even at work, about what used to happen individually with the members of the family And what was the environment like? Even if you think about the partition itself, this was the bloodiest migration this planet has ever seen. Millions of people lost their lives. And we had some members of the family who were on literally the last train which came into India. And they moved around to many places and finally settled down in a small town called Ludhiana. After going to Delhi, Agra, Panipat, one of them went off to Bahadurgarh, one went to Mumbai, or Bombay then, and then finally came back and settled in Ludhiana, where they started this business with literally nothing. As you saw in the early lead-on film, they came with the shirts on their backs. Like millions of other refugees, they'd left everything behind, their homes, business, properties, or whatever they had. When I started to write, I actually started to write the story first, the book only about my father. Mr. Rai, who is the managing director of Hero Cycles, called me one day, and he said that he has gathered a lot of information on all the four brothers, and why don't we write a book about them? Now, Mr. Rai and I had written another book earlier, and I said, look, I'm already started, and I'm already doing this, but I think he's right. I took a pause and took a step back and said, if I think back about the way my father behaved, anytime he got recognized, he got an award or a reward, which he got many, many of, he would always say, this is not for me. This is not mine. This belongs to everyone around me. My entire family, all the people in the companies, all our suppliers, all our dealers, all of them are partners and this is theirs. So I thought it would be more appropriate to write a story about all four of them. And then it's not just a story about four of them, it is about the universe around them as well. So it's a family story, it's a business family story, it is a business story, it is a story of the evolution of the economy of India in the early days going all the way down to the 80s, and then more recently. It's also a little bit of geopolitics of the world. The publisher actually asked me when we started, who is the audience? Who are you writing this for? I said, frankly, I would never have thought I was going to write a book. But because we are where we are at, and many, many people have said this is a story which needs to be told, if nothing else, but for the lessons which lie in this story, even for kids in our own family, for them to realize that this is not a cakewalk. When you see a successful enterprise today, everything looks easy. But if you look deep inside, each enterprise has faced many challenges to get to where they got to. If they really get to be successful, if they build size and scale, if they build credibility, if they build brands, there are many sacrifices which go behind this. So therefore, it is important to talk a little bit about this, especially as the connect with the old systems is going away. Therefore, it's also important right in the medium that people would be interested to read. So I said, this is therefore a book that I would ideally like to target at as wide an audience as possible. For entrepreneurs, for business managers, for business consultants, for students, for business schools, and for just anybody else. And so they said, you must restrict the book to X number of words and Y number of pages. I did agree, hesitatingly, and I think it was a mistake, by the way. I sometimes think it was a mistake. But what it helped me do is to make it short enough to be an easy read. It's written in a style of multiple stories. But there was a little bit of a message we were trying to give at each stage. So if you saw, the book was released with newspaper and not using excessive plastics. Because sustainability is something that the group, the family, and the business has worked on for the last 50 years, long before it became fashionable, long before it became mandatory. The paper in this book, so there were many versions of this book, so it took quite a bit of time actually, because each time I would write and then I would read it myself and I would find something needed to be different. Finally, the publisher tells me, you have to put a stop to it sometimes. Otherwise, it will never ever get published. So this actually is the 6th version that I wrote, which has been published. So we sourced paper from responsible forests. We actually did 24 versions of the jacket that you see of the book right here. The idea was to make sure that if you're going to do it, you should do it right, or not at all. So there are many stories in here about how partnerships got built, how relationships got built, the challenges of technology, as to how India, from a nation which was a new country but an ancient civilization, was learning its feet and looking at manufacturing as the backbone of economic activity. So for those, going back to the current times, there are, I believe, a number of lessons here for startups and entrepreneurship, for risk-taking abilities, why manufacturing continues to be important for us, and why it's important to always think ahead, to take risks, to make mistakes, and allow yourselves and those around you to make mistakes, but also to learn from the mistakes. So many, many people need to be thanked for this book. This book has 2 forewords, which are unusual. Normally, it's only one is written. Dr. Manmohan Singh wrote one foreword, and Arun Jaitley, the former finance minister, wrote a second one, which again is unusual because there were 2 people with, well, they were both wonderful gentlemen, but very different schools of thought. We also got wonderful endorsements from significant leaders like Mr. Ratan Tata, Mr. Rahul Bajaj, Sunil Mittal, Deepak Parekh, Anand Mahindra, Bhavish Agarwal. And we had tremendous response. As the publisher just said, in week 1 itself, the book hit the bestseller list. So clearly there is something which has attracted people to the book, and I hope they will see in the book or in the story whatever is useful for them. It's not just a business book. So if somebody wants to read the story book, that's fine too. And a big and special thank you to my panel here. Anil, as many of you know, runs an absolutely outstanding business called Havells. Anil's story and mine is not very different. Anil actually wrote a story on his father a while ago, and I was on the panel exactly in this manner as he is today. His father, like mine, went through tough times and built the business in a very similar manner, based on relationships, people, and sheer hard work and amazing determination. Preeta is familiar for many of you. Preeta and her family truly brought us actually standardized quality healthcare. There was no concept of that before this in India. Started by her father, but Preeta and her sisters are doing an absolutely amazing job for not just continuing to maintain it, but to build it out into a modern, contemporary, caring healthcare system. I don't need to introduce Mohan to anyone. Mohan is seen more on TV than any of us see him personally. He's an amazing, amazing mind, and he's not shy of airing his views. People talk about Indians having views. Every Indian, they say, has more than one view on the same thing, and no Indian is shy of airing his or her views. But here is a person who is both thoughtful, considerate, and forward-looking, and an absolute storehouse of knowledge. So Mohan, big thank you for agreeing to moderate this panel. The idea of this panel was that since this is a story, the book is a story of a family business, and we don't often realize that worldwide, not just in India, worldwide, the largest number of jobs, the largest amount of revenue to governments actually comes in from family-owned businesses. In Asia, in Europe, in North America, Latin and South America, they have an important role to play in creating a culture, philosophy, ethos. If they do it badly, it affects the entire environment. If they do it well, that sets an example for many, many others to follow. So thank you, Preeta and Anil. Truly appreciate this. There are many in my office who've helped support the writing of this book. And I have this big special thank you to Ajay and his team who've organized this event, Ashwini and Prakash and Jaideep in my office who helped me to put all of this together. The number of people actually I can go on is a lot, but the result is here with you, so hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much, and good luck for your annual session.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Munjal, for sharing your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, the book is available for sale. Please pick up a copy and you could get autographed by the author. Thank you, Mr. Munjal, once again for selecting MMA to launch the book. Ladies and gentlemen, we now commence the panel discussion on business valuation. How do we assess the true worth of a family business? To moderate the session, I hand over the proceedings to Mr. T.V. Mohandas Pai.
Thank you. Sunil, congratulations. Great book, great story, an inspiring legacy for everybody around the world. Now, you built two world-class industries, two very, very large industries out of a very, let us say, deindustrialized country like Dr. Singh said. Now, when you started on the road, did you have this aspiration of building the world's largest company, of using great technology, processes, or you learned as you went and did what you knew best?
So, Mohan, this business started not with any grand plan, by the way. This business started as a tool for survival and providing for the family. What they were doing was using common sense. It's a whole different matter, by the way, that common sense is not very common. And if you think about what they did, what are now called contemporary business practices, management practices, governance practices, as also manufacturing practices, is what they turned out. Things like just-in-time inventory, we believe JIT came from Japan, but if you look back at the history of this company, that's what it practiced. But it practiced it not, again, because any consultant or somebody told them, but because they told all of their suppliers, we don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of resources, only supply us what we need today so that we can use it, produce and sell the bicycle and not have to stock either incoming or outgoing goods. And by the way, we will pay you on time so that your cash cycle works and you continue to supply us as efficiently as you can. And there is a whole host of practices of this nature which started off, whether it was on the shop floor or it was governance, having outsiders on private companies' boards, which of course was uncommon in India in those days, including having some women on the boards. Today, all of these are being legislated as common new variety of governance practices. But the organization actually started on this very basis. So what it tells you is what people call motherhood statements actually work.
And the management style, in a part of the book you said, it is a bit Punjabi. You use the word Punjabi. You remember that? Now tell me, what kind of a management style was that? You were very parivar-oriented, very paternalistic, took care of people. And this compassion came from the fact that you belong to a large joint family where your mother taught you values, your father went away to the Gurukul when you was young, and this sustained throughout. And you told me once that your attrition in Hero was negligible. People stayed with you, people created value. So what is this kind of a Punjabi marketing style? We are in Chennai, there's a Chennai style, so maybe we should learn from you.
So I don't know what the typical Punjabi style is, but this was set up like a large family. And literally, like I'm saying, these gentlemen I called are friends of mine and friends of my dad's going back decades. And that's the same thing that was done in the business on an everyday basis. The people who worked in the companies, people who were suppliers and those who were dealers, were always considered a part of this large family. There are some of them sitting in this room right now. I saw some of the dealers walked in with me when I came in. And the ability to treat people as equals and give them regard and respect and listen to people, I think had a big dramatic impact. And by the way, what I told you was attrition was not low, attrition was actually zero. It was zero for many, many decades. It is different today. In the last 20 years, we see people leave. But interestingly, about 80 to 90% of the people who leave always send a message, can I come back? Because they actually have no comparison as long as they're in one place. They actually don't know what the rest of the culture is like outside. So that has been one big strength, that it's a very people-driven organization. So the strength doesn't come from the technologies, and we do use one of the most modern technologies in the world. We started using robotics, by the way, 40 or 50 years ago. It doesn't come from the buildings, and we make some of the fanciest buildings in the world. We have the world's largest green roof in one plant. We built the world's greenest automotive plant. But that's not the strength. It is still the people.
And Sunil, you were able to hire very good people. Now, one of the challenges about family businesses, in many family businesses, is the distance you have between the families, members who work in the company, and the people you hire. But you treated them very differently. Did it come out of what your mother taught you when you were young, to respect elders, to treat people with respect, and always be respectful? Or it was a deliberate style that you picked up just because you wanted to be competitive?
I don't think it was a conscious thing. So I actually never even thought about whether my mother alone taught us. I think it was my mother, my father, my uncles, my aunts, my grandparents too. My grandmom used to go every morning at 4 a.m. to clean the floor of the Gurdwara, which was a few hundred yards away from home. She was not a Sikh, by the way, but she would still go every morning and clean the floor as just seva, as things you do for others. And you actually learn some of this by osmosis. I don't think you can actually teach this too much, but if people see this being practiced, this is something you adopt and adapt as your own style. You can, of course, do it consciously, but I think if you do it as a put-on job, then you can do it for a short time. And because they were doing this all the time, so we didn't really have to look around too much for this kind of learning. And I don't mean to sound too much of a do-gooder, but it actually works, because as I said, reality, the people, we never hired, by the way, the toppers in the business school, etc. It was people, ordinary people like you and me, who actually got the environment, facilitating environment, which allowed them to become heroes, to be able to perform the way they did.
And also, Sunil, you were born in a different era, different environment. Family was large, you were growing, maybe didn't have much money, and you were frugal. Now, how do you pass on your cultural values to your children? Values of humility, of treating people with respect, of having compassion, working together with people. Have you been successful in passing, when I say you, your generation, have you been successful in passing on all those values you got to your children to make them successful? And also, do they have the fire in the belly that you had when you people, your sons, came into the business?
It's a very good question, by the way, because it's well known that for most family-owned businesses, the business gets destroyed by the third generation. As much as 94% of the businesses get destroyed for these very same reasons. So we attempted early on to build practices of how we operate, which, as we learned, hopefully our kids would learn, but it gets tougher with every successive generation, because they are growing up in a very different environment. They are growing up as children who are seeing wealth around them, as they're seeing material goods around them, unlike what we saw. But what we did was we continued to practice ourselves to be frugal, to be careful, to be giving, to be caring. And I think we are very blessed that somebody upstairs is looking after us. And I look at our next generation, majority of the children, many of them now are working, have adopted very similar styles. It's not all of them, but a majority of them. Because I'll tell you, one of the differences, one of the challenges I find, and I've seen this in many of my friends' families too, we tell our kids, you must go to the best places to educate yourself. And in a sense, we're telling them you should be independent-minded. Then when they come back, we're letting them, by the way, you should only do what I'm going to tell you to do. So we create a conflict there ourselves. And there is, in any case, a conflict in business and family, as you know, in the nature as to how they operate. In a family, you try to give equality to everybody. So you're a completely socialist pattern. In a business, you're saying, you want the right person for the right job, so you will recognize those who perform well, who do better. So you want to give them better compensation. So there is a built-in conflict, which is why family-owned business is a complex entity, and therefore it needs a little bit of more thinking, and its impact is immense. So it's absolutely critical that the next generation of entrepreneurs and owners and promoters of family-owned businesses are given training not only as good managers, but also as good owners, and these two are distinctive.
Sunil, last question before I go to Preeta. I think you made the statement that family is socialism, business is capitalism. Can you explain that to us?
So as I just said, in a family, if you have 3 kids, you want them all to be treated the same. So that is by nature socialist. So you want everybody to get similar facilities, to have the same opportunities. If you're going to have 3 weddings in the family or 2 weddings, you want that all of them to be somewhat similar, which is not at all the case in business. The business, by its very nature, is fiercely competitive and which is encouraged. That's how all of our organizations run, and that's how they're successful. So you have to be careful and understand there's a fine line between the two. As to how you tread this line is very important. There are families in which you say all the members of the family will work and all of them will be treated the same. It's very rare to find those families building global businesses.
Preeta, 1 doctor, 4 girls, still together, built India's biggest hospital chain, life sciences, compassionate, and does something which every person in this country wants. In a different way, he built the cycle, you built, medical care. Now, when your dad started off and we entered business, did you have a view of what you would be or how you evolved? And how is it all the girls stayed together in the business and are still running the business?
So good. I'll tell you a story. When my dad started off, where we tease him and we say we were cheap labor because daughters feel very bad that their father's working so hard. So over the weekends and whenever we could, he was at HM Hospital, a very busy doctor, and would work 24/7. And if a patient was sick, then it was everyone's problem. My mom even would go into the puja room and pray so hard for that patient to survive. So that's how we grew up. And even today, it can be somebody close to us, someone we feel bad for, but there's a beautiful temple she set up at the back. And we would conduct pujas for them. So I think it's part of our DNA. And that helped because the 4 daughters, like Charlie's Angels, would do anything the dad said. Honestly.
Pratap Reddy's Angels.
I swear. I hope we're the angels. I'd love to be called that. I think one among the 4 of us is a bit of a devil, but that's another story. Sunil knows her well. But having said that, I think even today, we would do, if my father wants it, we would do it. We don't question him. So it kind of sets a culture, it makes it easy for the leadership. Sometimes the finance professions or the clinicians would go and say maybe there's a better way. But the thing about my father is that he's always 10 steps ahead, especially in investing into clinical work, methodologies, hiring clinical talent, or investing into technology. We invested in something which was definitely not going to give us returns. We all know that. So when he was asked by the board or private equity, he said, listen, patients have to get well. The rest of the numbers and all you people worry about. So we grew up with a culture like that it's, it's clinical outcomes, business of caring. Caring comes first and business afterwards. So I think that culture kind of keeps all of us together. And there's a bit I read in, Sunil's book last night about how everybody, the 4 brothers respected each other in terms of decision making. And, if anything had to be done, it was always with the discussion. And I think we've kind of imbibed that culture among us, that we don't really take major decisions on our own, and it's we had to sell our insurance business, but it was a huge discussion among the family. And then of course go to my father and he said, yeah, okay, it breaks my heart, but it makes sense. So I think this respect for each other is what keeps families together. And also you have to really understand that each one has a strength. Among the four of us, Sunita's fantastic with finance and strategy, and we don't even question her. Shobana's the most entrepreneurial. She's built already 3 businesses by herself. Sangeeta, we call her Saraswati because she's the wisest of the lot. Fantastic with diplomacy and that depth of wisdom. So I think we have to respect that. And you have to ask me what I am. I'm the eldest, so I'm the servant leader. And I'm the one who really respects and sees what is available with all 3 of them. So sometimes, you need to be able to get the best out of everyone. And it's, I love saying it, but I say I'm the housekeeper in the company because every time there's a problem, then it comes back to the eldest, even with the next generation. We have 10 in the next generation, and they're fine. All children are a bit spoiled today thanks to Instagram, I must confess. But I think when they need, either they need advice or they need to be pulled out of some little issue in their own businesses or whatever, then they come. So I think each one has a space. You have to be respectful of boundaries, and you have to give a lot of respect to each one's strength. And there is no point, competing with each other, because you can only be very good at, something which you're very good at. There's no point trying to be as good as somebody else when they have the strength. It's almost like an orthopedic surgeon wanting to be a cardiac surgeon. You can't do both. And if we have that mindset, I think, the 4 horses will run the chariot not too badly.
So a new book, 4 sisters, 1 bed, and a revolution that shaped India.
Well, we did a book, and it was the healer and the healthcare revolution, and we sat with someone and we don't have the writing talent or the way Sunil is, but it happened, and there is a book. We might have to do version 2, but I don't know about the 4 sisters.
But Prita, in the work that you do, your father was a superstar as a doctor. He practiced as a doctor. And handling good doctors is a very difficult thing to do because they're all individual performers. They have their own reputation. They have their brand. People go to prima donnas. People go to a hospital for the doctor, and the hospital is secondary. But how did your dad create such a sense of loyalty among some of the most extraordinary doctors in this country?
There's just simple cultures which happen. My dad just turned 87, but whoever walks into his room, he will stand up and wish them. All the time. So I think, and even now he walks around the hospital corridors. The clinicians see that, and they know that, at any time it's an open door policy, they can go to him. And whether they're right or wrong, at least they will get an answer or a decision. That happens, and I think that culture is passed down not only to our generation, but to some of the children who are working with us in the hospital. The clinician, the prima donnas really, they need somebody to tell them that they're always right, and when they're wrong, it has to come from them. You can't go and tell a prima donna you took the wrong step. But they will come back and say, could I have done something better? And I think that wisdom and maturity is something we need for the clinicians. But now technology is helping because data, everything is driven by data. And if clinical outcomes are not that great as they should be, the data goes to them. So we don't have to call them in and correct them. So they know for themselves that, it's time to change, it's time to have robotics or do minimally invasive work. So everything happens because it's backed by data, and I believe that we should never just let our emotions get in the way. And when you deal with a difficult situation, it's always good to be backed by facts and data.
Yeah.
So this last bit is an important point about emotions. So there is again a conflict here. We always tell people, please follow your passion. Okay? And that's what we're telling our children now, by the way. If you have something you're madly crazy about, go and do that as a business. At the same time, you tell them you have to draw this line where emotion for the business is concerned. Because there are times when you have to do things exactly like Preeta said. You have to sell a business, you have to shut it down, you have to fire people, you have to change machines. All of these are part of what you do. So you have to be able to wear these hats at different times. I think that's important as a leader. The ability to adapt and change is as important as good follow-through.
Anil, let me come to you now. You waited long enough. Another extraordinary story. I mean, you are building the Samsung of India. I'm using Samsung, don't get upset, for people to understand what you could build. But your father started off on the journey in a very small way. He used to cycle himself, sell himself, and you had a family that worked together and grew. Extremely hard work. How did you see your father in the business? What is it that he brought to the table to make you grow to be what you are today?
I think, thank you very much. The first and foremost thing, very similar to Shri Munjal, Brijmohan Lal Munjal ji, very similar, he was a people's man. So he would be able to, make great relationships, he would be able to motivate people, he would be able to understand where his strengths and weaknesses are and how he can complement strengths with the people around him. And I think that innate, initially as for family sustenance and for sustaining himself and the family around him, he built this business more to, earn a living. But then he built a team around him, and not only employees and colleagues around him, but also the larger stakeholders around him, whether it's the dealer network or the vendor network. It's all how you create those relationships over a longer period of time and make business sense as well as economic sense for everybody around them. Not, we keep talking about maximizing shareholders' wealth. And a family business, even at the size when it was very small, it was thinking about maximizing the stakeholders' wealth rather than just the shareholders' wealth. That's something which, these self-made entrepreneurs could very well understand right from the very beginning. And that's something which he had right, from in the early 1960s and 70s. He also came from Punjab, the same place where the Munjal family came from. And you talked about this Punjabi culture. It was this, innate sense of entrepreneurism and ability to take risks, but calculative risks. Very interestingly, we were talking on the way here in this book. Munjal Saab says, "Dekh lenge." When Honda offered them the partnership for motorcycles, and he was actually looking for scooters and motorcycles. So he said, "Okay, dekh lenge. We'll manage. Just even without scooters, we'll manage." So that ability, just like the Amitabh Bachchan of Sholay saying, "Dekh lenge," that ability to take that calculative risk and have the vision for the future, I think that's something which these born entrepreneurs are capable of, and that's what my father brought to this business.
And your father had a very innate ability to build a network. He knew all the dealers, they're part of his family. He knew the children being born in that dealer network. He went for the weddings, he went for the funerals, he went everything. What motivated him? The fact that they're important for the business, or he felt that they're part of the extended family? Was there innate, let's say, passion within him to say, this is my family? I mean, you are his son, that's fine, but they are my family too. I must look after them, just like his father. I think his father knew all the dealers, everybody by name. And I remember one time, I think, Sunil, when the market was not good and you had to sell, and they all bought the stuff immediately because they said, whatever you want, we'll do it for you. This loyalty that was built up, what is the secret? What drove him to do that?
I think, frankly, the way we look at it now, maybe we can say that he felt that it is good for business. But my father himself was a dealer, before he started manufacturing. So he had a shop in the electrical market of Delhi. And he used to see how companies, with those quotas and the licenses, they used to treat the dealers. It was almost as if they were selling drugs to these dealers, and so he never liked the way the companies dealt with the dealers. And when he became a manufacturer, he took it on himself that he will take care of his dealers. And he would always tell me, even till the last days, he would tell me that we have to take care of the dealer families in a way that we take care of their growth, which means for their families. We need to grow their business. Forget about growing your business. We need to think about the growth of their business. We need to think about their profits. And we need to think about their peace of mind. The third very important thing, that we don't want the dealers to be thinking anything, whether it's their children families or children education, somewhere or the other, they should earn enough money that they don't have to worry about those kind of things, which I had to worry about when I was a dealer. So, he would just go to that extent of taking care of the livelihoods of the dealers, the welfare of the dealers so much that, the dealers would do anything for them. I remember the first time when my father and I met Brijmohan Munjal ji, and he said, Mr. Gupta, I've heard about you. You take care of your dealers a lot. And I think we should get together because my dealers' children are now growing up. And I need to think about their growth of business. And maybe there could be some sort of a tie-up between Havells and Hero, and how, some business can be associated so that they can grow their businesses. So that's the kind of concern these gentlemen brought to the business for the dealers. And I think those relationships, definitely when you do something for somebody, they give you back.
And Anil, your focus on quality. Focus on quality right from the beginning, the brand, and buying the brand name Havells. When people think of Havells, you think of a global brand, right? And it brings to mind some very nice things. And this focus on technology, we just went to your plant in Gilot, where you have a fully robotic plant for AC making, and you say that you're going to beat China in cost and in quality. Where did this focus on technology come? Sunil has this focus on technology. Preeta has a focus on technology. Technology and upgradation and quality has been in the heart of what the three of you did. Where did this come from? It came from your father at that time, right?
I think, as Sunil just said, family businesses look at their business for a very long-term vision. They don't come there for the next 3 or 5 years. They don't have a private equity kind of a mindset, or, a mindset where you want to flip the business. So you want to sustain the business for 25, 50, 100 years.
Your PE is very high, it's an FMCG PE, unbelievable. And don't tell me that last 2 quarters, it's not okay, but, the market was bad, but everybody trusted you.
Right. No. So, so again, this also gets from the trust over a longer period of time. So you see the future. And I think when you start looking at your business from a very long-term perspective, then you want to compete with the best in the world. You want to say that I will invest today for the future, so that my business is sustained over the next not 3 to 5 years, but 5 to 10, 20 years. So that's when you start investing in technology, manufacturing. You want to be the best in the world so that you can, again, taking care of the larger network of stakeholders rather than shareholders. And if customer is also viewed as your stakeholder, you want to do the best for your customer. You want to give them the best quality at the right price, the right economics. For that, you need to invest in technology, you need to invest in manufacturing. And I think it all comes, today it sounds like management practices, but it all comes from the needs, the need created within, right from, as he said, just from common sense, that if you need to do the best, you need to invest.
Well, many families don't do that.
Well, again, again, we were talking on the way here. Sunil mentioned one line which actually clung to me when he launched my book a few years back. And he said, when the business is small, the business is for the family, which means for the sustenance. But when the business starts becoming bigger, the family is for the business. So which means you keep reinvesting into the business. Your family needs are taken care of. Your house, your day-to-day living expenses are taken care of. But then rest everything you are doing for the business, which means whatever profits you are earning, you keep reinvesting back into the business. So the moment you start distinguishing that and you start, making different empires other than, your existing empires, then things go bad. And I feel that as long as the family is for the business, these things don't go wrong.
Sunil, here is a tough question. Every question is easy for you, but not a tough question. Every family thinks of the company as their property. It's theirs, belongs, they have a proprietary interest, which is good and bad. how did you people ensure that none of the corporate resources were used for personal purposes? Did you ever use corporate resource for a personal purpose? Or how did you ensure the separation?
I think this is very important and critical, especially in the governance environment that the world is in today. Some practices which were accepted as normal 20 or 30 years ago would actually get you behind bars today. And many people have seen that kind of a situation. So we were actually fortunate to have grown up in an environment where the norm was to do the right thing. Not just the legal thing, by the way, but also the ethical thing. And I think if you put that filter, so what I could tell all the people that when we hire senior people, so there are two questions that I actually ask them, and two pieces of advice that I'd like to give them, is that you as a manager will be expected to make decisions every day. So if you have a problem, put your hand on your heart, and if it says that's the right decision, go ahead and take it, and we will completely support you, even if it goes wrong. Because if you're taking it in the best interest, with the best intent, and with the right frame of mind, you will do the right thing. But it's not always easy to do, and you're right, because the environment got created in India especially, it's a lot easier today, which is why actually one of the reasons I thought it's important to write. It used to be much worse than it is today, but it's still not okay. It's still not free enough. You put unnecessary restrictions, people will try and find ways to go around them. Part is, and sometimes people have become habitual, even when that restriction is removed, they continue to behave the same way. If you think a little bit today, when the demonetization got announced in India, we said there's too much excessive cash in the economy, and people are running businesses based on cash and not in the normal economy. Now, for a while, it dipped down. I'm told today, and I checked this only last week, there is more liquid cash today in the economy in India than there was on the 9th of November when demonetization got announced. So I'm just wondering, is this a habit that we have? Can we not, as a people, as a nation, as an economy, as an industry, say that this is the way we will do business? Because, by the way, there is a benefit to doing business straightforward in a straightforward way. And I can give you hundreds of examples. It may not be easier, but it is actually much better. And this is something I think more people, more responsible individuals, more responsible leaders need to talk about a little bit.
Prita, you two did the same, right? Separated corporate resources from personal resources. How did you bring about this separation? Did any point of time you thought this company is yours? Well, whatever I spend, it is mine. Or,
by the way, all of us think these companies are ours, by the way. I
yours.
tell you,
Yeah, it
we
is.
always think these companies are ours. But as I said at the start, you have to be careful between passion and emotion. If you can draw that line, then it allows you to understand this a little bit better. Otherwise, not difficult at all to cross the line.
Prita?
So we started off with very little. You know, it was dad and starting the business. So everything actually went into it. And so Anil's statement made a lot of relevance to me that the family is for the business and the business is not for the family. So when everything you have has to go into the business, you actually own that. So if you take anything away from, that's also the family coffer. You know, you own maybe a little bit of it, but it's still yours because you built it up and you've put everything into it. So why would you take more than what is rightfully yours from it? So I think it's part of our DNA, and systems also have to be set in such a way that, you know, there's perpetuity in that discipline. And that we've learned, you know, it was an effort, we've done what we've had to do. So I think using beyond what is allowed, you just have to set a system in where you can't do it. And, you know, silly example, but even if any of us or our families need healthcare, we're all insured. So you can't...
You actually pay for the healthcare in hospital.
Well, we're insured, so the insurance pays for it. But at least that discipline is set in. It's not a free-for-all. And I think, you know, these kind of things have to be part of a family business. And when you build the business, that's what happens.
Anil?
I must add, if any television or any air conditioner comes to my house, I have to pay to the dealer. It doesn't even come directly from the factory to me, which I have to pay for it. I have to buy from the dealer and I have to pay for it. But just also on this, there is a financial sense to it as well. If you say the P's are high as let's say 40 or 50, if you take 10 lakhs out of your company, you're actually reducing your worth by 5 crores.
No. The question is, you separate it out because that's the right way or because it makes business sense?
No, I think it's the right way. The first and most important thing is the right way.
And it also makes business sense.
It also makes business sense.
And both of them come together. Folks, I want 5-8 minutes more. Those who want to listen for 5-8 minutes, put your hands up or I'll end it. Okay. So thank you very much. Sunil, now, I'm going to ask 2 questions to all of you. Sunil, you had an extraordinary father. She has an extraordinary father. He had an extraordinary father. What kind of a person was your father? What did you admire most in him? Did you quarrel with him? Did you disobey him? Did he listen to you? He overruled you all the time. I allowed you to work. Explain to us, what kind of a person was your father?
There is a term in Hindi called saral. Okay? He was a very easy person to be with, easy person to deal with. And he always had a very young mind. So he was open to suggestions and ideas, which you normally see as people get older, their views get fixed. Their ability to be flexible, adaptable, to accept new ideas becomes less and less. And I never saw that with him, by the way. He was very, very open. And I have
Was that only to his sons or to everybody?
Everybody.
Anybody.
By the way, that's one good thing he did. He didn't create that distinction. I had a little bit of an advantage. I managed to spend more time with him than most others, and I mean including the family. And maybe that's why I thought I should write the book. And I managed to spend more time not only with him, but also with my uncles. Incidentally, the dealership, I wanted to interrupt you. When you were talking about dealers, it was my uncle, Mr. O.P. Munjal, who started this connection with the dealers. And then, of course, my father took it on and he went even way beyond. So they actually, the other thing about them was not just him, is how the 4 of them, unfortunately actually 3 of them, because the eldest one passed away in 1968, how they as a collective and individuals behaved. Completely different, but completely complementary to each other. So that made life a lot easier for others to deal with them as well.
Rita, your father.
So, about my dad, if you ask my mother, she will say, oh my God, he is so tough. If you ask the 4 of us, we would say we will never cross the line which he sets.
You listen to him even today.
Even today. And, but the thing is, if you go to him with a problem, he's 10 steps ahead, and something he told you today which you don't think may work, actually works. So I don't know what it is about him, but that wisdom which he's got and the intuitiveness, I think he's had it. And somehow you don't feel like not listening to him. So there's something about him. And then when he walks the hospitals, or we see these people, they look at him and they say, oh my God, he's a healer. And then when we're trying to recruit somebody and we're a little unsure if this great prima donna clinician will join. And then we take him to my dad's office and he looks at us and he says, we can't say no to this man. So I think that in, different facets of my dad. But the one thing which I have seen is that it's never about doing something for himself. And it's always, for the greater good, and it's for the passion of healthcare and healing. And the latest mantra, which none of us are able to fathom why he's doing it, but it makes a lot of sense, is he says, do whatever you can to keep people out of hospitals. You have this many beds that'll get filled in, but what if you caught the disease early and they actually didn't have to come to you? So, he's the type who will turn a business completely upside down because it's for the greater good. And if it makes business sense, by the way, so be it. So I think that's to us what he is.
Anil?
I think all our fathers were born entrepreneurs, right? So I always consider myself as being a trained entrepreneur rather than being a born entrepreneur. I was fortunate to be under the tutelage of a born entrepreneur. Born entrepreneurs have all these things what they're speaking about, the openness, the vision, the ability, the wisdom to see. Humility, what others are not able to see that. But as children, I must say that it's not difficult, it's not easy to work with born entrepreneurs. They have their own whims and fancies, they have their own ups and downs. And, I've written very honest things in my book, about the kind of things I would have to face with my dad. But again, because of humility and because of being open, you had the ability, if you had the patience, to go back and again revisit any topic which he has probably not fully understood or not fully, agreed with earlier. And that ability was amazing just because he was a born entrepreneur. He was not just be listening to me, but every person. He would call up dealers to, if he had a business idea, he would call up dealers and take their advice as well. So he was very open to advice, and I would never think of having any problem, a long-term problem. Short-term problems, always, tiffs would happen day in, day out, but those were all very, very short-term. But in the long term, I would never have a problem with him.
I want to add two things. One was, he had this amazing childlike fascination for new things, new ideas, new technology, new place, new people. Always, he was always looking at where he could find something new and how that would fit into the larger scheme of things. The challenge, by the way, that I faced for a few years, not for too long, was being compared with him. Whenever you go to a government office, somebody else, instantly they would start comparing you. And that actually can be a challenge.
And Sunil, final question before we close. Sunil, you had the mind of a strategist. If you read the book, you write very clearly that you thought of the future for the family, approach the family, how you're going to create the future, where people have their freedom, maybe separation, maybe everything else. And why do you think that was necessary for you to do? And what made you do it? And work through the entire process without rancor. We're not seeing anything in the media. No rancor, no unhappiness. And it worked. Now we are all there together and the name carries on.
So the subject of family-owned business is a very fascinating one. There's a lot of research going on in the world now, especially in universities, business schools, and business consulting firms are doing a fair amount of research. I've actually been lecturing on this subject for about over 30 years now. So when I suggested this to my father and my uncle, they actually got upset with me. They got annoyed with me, and they said, people give examples of our family. And our old friends will tell you that it was a fact. People would say everybody works together, lives together, stays together, goes on holidays together. The businesses are doing so well, the family is all friendly. I said, exactly. Most times, this issue is only approached when there is a fight in the family or there is a big challenge in the business. And then everybody becomes selfish and they're pulling in different directions. You're not thinking of the larger wholes. You're not even thinking of the point that Anil just made. Your value and wealth lies in your business. If you can ensure continuity and success of business, your value, like we never had personal wealth till only a few years ago. None of us had individual homes as well. So everything was in the companies, in the businesses. So again, to the point I made earlier about their having this young mind, first they got upset. And then after a few days, they actually called me back. Are you sure? They asked me lots of questions. Why, how, how this can be done and why would we do it? And what would be the outcome? And I actually gave them reasonable assurance based on whatever I'd seen around the world. Because the fascinating thing is, about 80+% of issues in family-owned businesses are actually identical around the world. The solution, however, is unique to each family and to each business. Broadly, it's not different, but the specifics change. So I just suggested that I can almost guarantee you, in fact, I said I can't guarantee you, I can assure you, that the companies will be better off and the family will be better off and we will remain friends. Their response was, then we must do it. Not only should we do it, then we must do it.
But what made you come to the conclusion? That's the mind of the strategist.
So the The conclusion was because I was seeing how we are bringing up our children, to the point I made earlier, that some of them were very independent-minded, and they had views which were dramatically different from the way the things were going on. I said, they are our kids, so you have to respect their views. And there will be a conflict if you don't handle it now, and that conflict can blow up and doesn't affect the family alone. It affects businesses, it affects the entire environment, it affects the universe you live in. And this way, we have actually ensured entrepreneurship. If you look at the collective whole of the companies, we are much bigger today than we were before the restructuring. The family all works together. All our foundations still work together, by the way. I was just telling Anil on the way, last month we had my mother's birthday, 90th birthday, and we invited only family. There were 300 of us in the lunch. Nobody except family. Everybody still comes in for all family events.
Okay, Sunil, we have to close now. We have listened to you for 1 hour, but we want some takeaways. Tell us 5 things we must take away from your life experience, your book, so we can also learn and build huge family businesses, become billionaires and all that nice stuff.
So the one thing we must remember is not to take ourselves too seriously. Because I've seen as Indians, we tend to take ourselves too seriously. That gets us upset, that makes us angry, and we react to things which is not logical. The second thing is that there is no one destination, by the way. It is the journey. If we do not learn to enjoy the journey, frankly, you're paying, it's like hell every day to go to work, to do stuff. And then the destination doesn't even matter if you're suffering all the way through. The journey is fantastic. The third, I think, which is important is that we must realize that all the people, when I look around in this room, we are completely blessed. We live in a country where 25 million people do not get 2 square meals a day. We don't only have just the meals, we have the ability to say yes and no to things. Not too many people have that ability. So we need to realize that we have a responsibility bigger than ourselves. We must reach out beyond ourselves and do things not just for our families, but for others who are less fortunate, because we have the ability to. And that is a responsibility, unfortunately, is not being taken enough care of at this moment. The next, I think, we tend to lose this feeling every now and then about us being part of the nation. Nation building is a role that all of us have. We must attempt that whatever we do, we should not just do it right, but we should also do it well, because that is true nation building. And I mean, I can go on for many other.
Last one.
The last one, I think, is that the most valuable thing that we are given is our relationships.
Maintain relationships.
If we can nurture them, maintain them, the value of that is absolutely immeasurable.
Preeta. Now your turn, Preeta. Tell us 5 things.
I think, the empathy and compassion, and I'm saying this because of the business we're in, that we should never ever lose the people connect. Because it can be a circumstance, never carry that baggage with us, no monkeys on our back. The art of listening, I think, is very important. While, we think we might know everything and we can go on saying 100 things, you might lose that opportunity of learning if you don't have the art of listening. Also, I would agree that, we lose the beauty of the journey because we're running for the destination. So we forget to smell the roses on the way. There is beauty everywhere. And I think we need to learn and see that. Again, that sense of gratitude, because I feel that again, it's because I don't know anything except the hospital business, honestly. And I love beautiful things. But when I walk into the hospital and I see a lot of, patients there, I keep worrying about the number who actually couldn't get in there and get that kind of health care. So that's the nation building aspect. Can we give back our learning so that more people can access? And I'm actually very happy about Ayushman Bharat. It might hurt the private sector healthcare, but it definitely gives, opens the doors for so many other people. So I think I do agree on the nation building aspect. The final bit about it is that we need to be we're in a position where we're responsible for hundreds of people. If we say, okay, we have 70,000 employees, we need to take it very seriously, and anything which we do will affect them. And so I think the responsibility which has come from everybody working so hard, and the trust, I would say that we should never let down on the trust factor, because I think that's super important.
Anil.
So I'll probably not say 5 things because, many of the things are common, but I'll attempt a couple of them. So first and foremost, again, relationships is the most important asset and wealth that we have. Start with the family first. If you have great relationship within your small family, then larger family, the colleagues' family, and then of course the entire community around. So you need to keep building these relationships and doing the right things for nurturing those relationships. I think both of them talked about nation building. First of all, I must say that while we talked about being blessed, I think we as citizens of India, we keep complaining about what we don't have in India, but I think we must say that we are the blessed ones, that we are living in our prime of our careers during this time in India, because probably this is the fastest and going to be the fastest economy for the next 20-30 years. I think we are going to be blessed that we have been born in this time in India. And I think third thing, very important, I go back to Gita and say that, doing your karma in the righteous manner is the most important thing you can do for, the entire community as well as the nation building. So whether you're running a business, whether you're, making a new factory, as long as it can support the nation building in terms of employment generation, in terms of, giving the best to the world around, I think that's something which you should continue to do. So focus on your karma, and karma with dharma. That's the most important thing I would say.
You want to say anything? Yeah, okay.
You inspired us.
Thank you. One is never ever be scared of making a mistake. Because too often we hold ourselves back that things may not work. The reality is the best learnings actually come from mistakes. And we've all seen that. The last one is, we keep talking about India's demographic dividend from the young, which we must nurture and must build. But we often forget that in the next 12 to 15 years, we will also be the oldest country in the world. And we have zero equipped right now, not under-equipped. We are zero equipped to handle the elderly in this country. So we do need to figure out, we do need to think a little bit about this. How do you equip yourself to be a nation which cares and nurtures the elderly as well?
So folks,
can I also add another one?
Yeah. Okay.
So Sunil talked about, never be scared of making mistakes. I think what I've also seen, and which is a learning for me as well as for the younger generation today, is to also have the ability to accept your mistakes. This is something which most of these born entrepreneurs have had all the time, and that's why they've been great entrepreneurs, that whatever they do, they keep reviewing it and accept those mistakes which they've made and then keep correcting it. And once the ego comes in, and which is what in the let's say the too educated environment, sometimes we don't like to accept our mistakes because we feel if we start accepting our mistakes, I think that's also a true test of entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much, folks. 3 extraordinary entrepreneurs, 3 extraordinary families, and 3 extraordinary role models. I would urge you to stand up and give them a standing ovation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that very fascinating and inspiring session. May I request Mr. Ram Venkatramani and Mr. Ravichandran Purushothaman to kindly come onto the stage.